and welcome back to the Bro Force Squad podcast. This is your host, Jeff Hornacek. Alongside me is my teammate, Alex English. We are here for our Westworld Episode 3 review. This review was titled The Stray. Alex, to get things started, I don't think we actually ever figured out why Episode 2 was called Chestnut, unless you did offline. I kind of have an idea why this one was called The Stray, so I'll let you start. Did you ever figure out the mystery behind Episode 2 being Chestnut?
Yeah, I was doing some Googling, and apparently it has to do with, like, some old English tale where, like, the same song repeats over and over again, or the same, like, fable repeats over and over again. By the way, thanks for that introduction. I'm Alex English. Nice to do this on a Wednesday. I don't know if people know we do it on Wednesdays because...
I said your name if you're implying that I did not.
You totally did. I just started talking. I don't want people to freak out, you know?
Who is this new voice in my ear?
Yeah, we do it on Wednesday because, you know, Westworld and Wednesday. I just made that up. I don't know why we do it on Wednesdays.
They wouldn't have known. You could have totally fooled them.
But, yeah, it has to do with, like, some British thing from, like, 1,000 years ago where it's, like, people would play the same annoying song over and over again. It's basically repetition. And in the second episode, we get to learn, you know, we kind of see a bunch of stuff repeat over and over and go on a loop, and right. So I think that was maybe the point behind
Which does kind of seem to be a bit of a motif for this show, if I make it France with us.
Oh, that's a word that I don't normally use. Well done.
I use it when I'm really trying to impress my guests at my dinner parties.
Yeah, or our podcast guests.
Correct.
We're going to have eventually.
So if this is your first time listening to us, thank you guys for joining us. We've done so far one of these for all the Westworld episodes. Obviously, we do a couple other show reviews. We did Luke Cage and one for the Magnificent Seven. Check those out also. And I think initially, Alex, you and I started off not knowing how frequently we would do these reviews. But after seeing the first two episodes and knowing what we know about Jonathan Nolan and J.J. Abrams and Lisa Joy and their history of work, I think we both came to the conclusion that there would be plenty to talk about after each episode. So we don't want to do a plot summary. If you're listening to this, you've either already seen the episode or you're just a sick fuck who wants to spoil it all for yourself. So nice try. Not exactly going to happen in that fashion. But I know we all have some theories, and I will be totally honest with our people listening out there. If you're listening to the show to get the answers to Westworld, we're bros just going through this like you are. We don't know. There was a couple times last time I watched it that I wish you were here with me because I would have paused it and just given you like one of these hand on my head looks and been like, what is going on? So what do you think is going on, I guess, is the first question that I'll ask you.
Wow. Okay. You know, this kind of takes me back a little bit to the question you asked me on the first podcast when you said, you know,
how
they
are
talk
you?
a little
was that
bit
the
about,
question?
What was that?
When I asked, how are you? Or was it more...
They were asking kind of, what do you think the overarching goal of the corporation that runs this thing is, right? And they kind of haven't really touched on that too much since then. But I was thinking about it, and I was kind of, you know, the overarching goal of the corporation that would finance something like this, wouldn't it basically be like we're trying to basically perfect artificial intelligence to use for things other than entertainment? And wouldn't it be great if we kind of make it be self-funded by basically just preying on, like, the simple pleasures of man? They basically come in there and pay millions of dollars to just, like, fuck around with our machines and get them to grow smarter and smarter every day. Meanwhile, we're, like, selling robots to China or something, like, or whatever it is for billions and billions of dollars.
Or maybe we're still in debt to China and we're just giving them robots for free.
Actually, that's probably... Oh, and also, who are we kidding? China, like, already invented Westworld. They're, like, on to the next thing. They're just like, that's boring. But, so I think that, like, that's kind of the overarching thing that I've been starting to watch the episode under, because I'm like, why do they really care to make these things so much better? It can't just be, like, the experience of these idiots that go visit. Like, that's not enough to motivate this sort of a investment, you know? So I think... it's interesting to watch the show and kind of have that thought in your back of your head. And in terms of what's going on in the actual world itself, I'm confused but so intrigued. I compared it to watching Memento for the first time, and I was like, that was good, but I need to watch it 6 more times to actually know what happened.
Exactly.
And this is what the show is going to be. When it's done, there's going to be some sort of, like, event that happens that's going to just blow all of our minds, but then we're not really going to be able to appreciate it until we go back and watch everything again.
So there's obviously two sort of stories going on. There's the one, as you were saying, in Westworld with the hosts and the people going in, basically the rich playboys who just can spend $40,000 a night to fuck robots. And then, like you're saying, the corporation. And at first, in the first two episodes, the story with the corporation who runs Westworld and sort of the kind of jockeying for power there with their investors and all that, yeah, it was interesting, but I think most people would say that where they really thought the twists and turns were going to lie was what's going on in the actual Westworld with some of those storylines.
Right.
Episode 3 definitely showed you some intriguing things regarding the other narrative, the one that, for lack of a better term, seemed a little more boring or a little more mundane. I'll just throw a few things at you because I know you have some really interesting theories on this. But first off, Robert Ford, Anthony Hopkins' character, who you really kind of had sympathy for in the beginning because it seemed like he just wanted to make this really cool place in Westworld, and just a bunch of other people around him who had gained more and more power in this corporation were just huge assholes. Like
Right.
the lady who was basically plotting the hostile takeover of his company, and the British dude who is clearly just your token douchebag for the show, as you said before,
Right.
and is just trying to I guess, corrupt everything that Robert Ford had done so much to build. In this episode, though, Ford comes across as a pretty big asshole himself. You don't really root for him anymore.
When he had the conversation with Bernard, Jeffrey Wright's character, I was just like, isn't the guy's just like trying to kind of pick your brain, man? Like, why are you like reminding him about his dead kid?
Yeah.
Why are you like you're just? But I that's like where one of my huge theories does come in though with Jeffrey Wright. And, like, in that scene...
Yeah, do you want to get to that now?
Yeah, just because, I mean, we're talking about... We don't have to touch on all the theories, but this one connects directly to Anthony Hopkins. Part of me thinks that the reason why we saw that whole different kind of look and feel from his persona in this episode is because he was interacting with a robot, right? And what do we know about how people interact with robots on this show? They kind of tend to be, like... very straight and to the point, and they're just like, "That's interesting. That's you have thoughts and feelings."
They don't talk to them like they're on an even keel as far as like intellectually.
Right, like almost like they're servants or something like that. So he just kind of sat him down and was like, "Hey, like, yeah, you have all these issues, and remember your dead kid." It's almost like he was like telling him commands as to why he should or should not feel a certain way.
Right, the dead
he's
kid
almost
thing...
a very advanced robot compared to all the other ones because he's like his own little pet project.
Right. So here's my question about that. What do you think? Because I think that's a theory that's gaining more and more traction as things go. It would make sense with him sort of wanting to use Dolores as kind of like his mole or his in to sort of corrupt Westworld, because he obviously has a hand in the fight. If has to draw a line in the sand, of course he's probably going to go with the other hosts over the humans. But do you think that, and this could be like a total mind F at the end, do you think that Bernard knows that he is a robot? Or do you think only Robert Ford does, maybe not even the other people who work at Westworld do, which would be kind of a cool twist?
Yeah, I think that's the only way it does make sense, is if he actually has no idea that he is that, and Robert Ford has been able to create this basically like a perfect being that doesn't even know that they are what they are, but are able to then create more robots and think that they're superior to... He created like an in-between almost, if you want to think about it that way, like something that's between a human and the robots betwixt, yes. The robots that we actually see in the park. And if you go back to Ford's monologue in episode 1, he talks about how, like, you know, we've basically cured every disease. Like, we've reached basically the pinnacle of, like, human evolution. The only thing we can do now is just, like, try to make it better. And I think he's literally just, like, talking to Bernard. I think he's just saying, like, you are the pinnacle. Like, I've made you. And now you're walking around, you think you're like me, but you don't even understand. Like, you're that much of a real life being that you have no idea that you're actually a robot.
So 2 questions here. Do you think that the other employees at Westworld know this about him? And then also, do you think that his altering with Dolores and the narratives in the park, sort of basically planning, for lack of a better term, like the virus in her that kind of makes them go off script. Do you think that that was done by Robert Ford, or do you think that's something that he's just started to do on his own? He has his own agenda, and that's kind of part of his, I guess, being sentient and like free thinking. Like he can make those types of decisions on his own, or do you think Robert Ford is still the one kind of pushing him towards all these things?
I think like Robert Ford's definitely the puppet master, but I can see it both ways.
And how creepy, based on history, is Anthony Hopkins as the fucking puppet master in something?
Right, right. I mean, that's probably the only way you get Anthony Hopkins to be on a TV show. Hey, Anthony Hopkins, you're going to be basically just the god.
I want a room with a view and to be puppet master. Okay, well, yeah, that's totally fine. You're good at acting and stuff. Be that.
So, I mean, I could see it where it could be kind of interesting if you go the route where, Bernard is kind of figuring it out on his own and he's kind of planting the quote-unquote virus himself. But I think that feeds into the played-out narrative of robots versus humans. I think it's a lot more interesting if you have this, like, puppet master in Anthony Hopkins who is actually doing everything because he has his own agenda and he agrees with whatever the corporation as a whole wants to do.
Yeah.
And, like, has this sort of, if you want to think about it, like mole in there, something that they're not aware of that is like screwing with the program, and they're just like running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Like, why is this happening? Meanwhile, he knows why.
And that brings up kind of, so there's like three main points I wanted to get to. The first one was Robert Ford being a huge dick now, and kind of what it means for the rest of the series. So the other employees, Luke Hemsworth, I believe his character's name is Ashley in the show. He's like one of the...
Yeah, it would be Ashley.
What is he basically? Yeah, right? Ashley, by the way, the only other man that I've ever heard of named Ashley was a singer in O-Town. So if you're listening to this, Ashley from O-Town, we'd love to have you on the pod.
And you use the word man loosely there.
Very loosely. Almost as loosely as when I described Theo Rossi from Luke Cage as an actor.
Listen to those podcasts, they're great.
Thank you. So the other employees don't really seem to know what's going on. It seems like only Robert Ford does. So what do you think his role with the investors at Westworld is? Is he working with them to do this, or is he kind of have a plan on his own that's really going to blindside everyone else?
I think he's just there to fuck shit up, man. I think he's so, like, he's basically in a position where they can't remove him because he's, like, the genius behind the whole operation. And I think they kind of are wanting to take it a different way, or they have these ideas, and while he may entertain them at the surface, I think that's why he would have the motivation to create Bernard.
Right.
And screw with them, and they would not even realize that he's capable of doing something like that. They might think that the best he can do is like what's currently in the park. Meanwhile, he's way ahead of where they think he is, and if he's a genius, why you keep it to yourself? If you have your own motivations that you're trying to achieve something, why would you share it with the board? They're just going to screw it all up.
Exactly. He has an upper hand with the investors because, they may technically have controlling stake of Westworld, but he actually controls Westworld.
Right.
I mean, he's the one who it almost seems like he can basically close out Candy Crush on his iPhone and open up another app and start basically chaos in the world if he even wanted to
like when you run out of lives in Candy Crush and you like trick the game into thinking it's been a day to get more lives by changing the date on your phone. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, wait, that's a thing? Oh my god. I just can't believe it. Yes. I guess I'm just a man of integrity and I never thought to do it. And by that I mean I never thought to do it, because that's definitely not the case. So that brings me to, I guess, my second point, and my second question that I really wanted to ask with the show. So at the end of episode 2, Robert Ford very cryptically hints at a new narrative that he has for Westworld. In this one, we sort of see Teddy Flood, James Marsden's character. He's taken out of his old narrative, which was, to be honest, really boring and depressing, where he meets Dolores, goes back, gets murdered while she gets raped in front of him. Every single day.
That's a cool loop.
Yeah, that's fun. That's a Tuesday.
Do that every day. Don't they even mention at one point, it's like, you've died at least 1,000 times, man.
Yeah.
Like somebody tells him that. It's like, wow, that's great.
Good for you. So in this one, he's on a weird, different loop where a guy named Wyatt, which I predicted in episode 1, go back, check the tape, there would be a character named Wyatt.
25-minute mark. I made that up.
Yeah, don't go to that. Actually, go to that, and who knows what I'll say there. Maybe something really weird. So now he's on this weird loop where he's trying to stop this insane person who's just going on a killing spree, who is a host, who he used to be in the army with, who used to be his general. Mm-hmm. But in the middle of his loop, these very oddly looking and oddly dressed figures in cloaks and robes.
Basically like a death cult.
Yeah, like one of those weird death cults. Like an after-school group that just worships, like, Satan, basically. So they show up, and they appear to be impenetrable to bullets. Now, here's where, obviously, the question is, the only people we've seen be impenetrable to firearms so far have been humans, like, paying to go into Westworld.
Right.
So what's going on? Did Robert Ford create hosts in this new narrative that are just, like, deities impenetrable to bullets? Or are these humans that, like, maybe it was like a cult team happy hour, and they're like, let's go to Westworld, do some Satan worshipping, worship death, and then we'll just go on this cool adventure in the woods. Like, what is going on here?
My theory on that is that I actually think they're 100% guests. Like, I don't think it makes sense. At this point, you have so many concepts that you're introducing. It doesn't make sense to introduce the concept of robots that are impenetrable. That just, like, wouldn't make any sense. You have to have some sort of, like, pillars that the show rests on. So I think they're just guests that their idea of fun is maybe not going to a brothel and having sex with a robot, or going on, like, a little, desert hunting trip. It's like, let's just, like, fuck shit up. Let's run around in the desert and just terrorize the countryside.
Yeah.
And I think they're guys, I think it's just like the Man in Black, where he's at a point where he's kind of like, he's leveled up, so to speak.
Yes.
I think these guys are also on that realm. Like, they're people that are either addicted to it, they have to go back, and they always go back, and every time they go back, they just, like, learn more and more and more. Or maybe they go and they stay there for a really long time, like they just have their bank account linked to the Westworld payment service, and every day they just withdraw.
They Venmo them each time.
They Venmo them $40,000 a day. So I think they're just hosts or guests, and they're there just to terrorize everything, and that's kind of like their
to fuck shit up.
It's their way of playing the game.
So here's my other question. Obviously, James Marsden's character couldn't shoot them. The woman who was with them, who I'm hoping I'm right here, I'm assuming she was a guest in Westworld. Like,
yeah. She was a guest. She was kind of like, this is kind of cool. Yeah, all right. And then all of a sudden, she sees the dead dudes hanging from the tree, and she's like,
things just got real very quickly.
I don't know about this. Yeah. I feel like that's kind of like what I'd be like if I went in there.
Did she try to shoot the hooded people at all, or was it just James Marsden? Because that would have been a telling sort of thing.
Oh, man, yeah.
I don't think she did, because I think he told her to go. He was basically, like, covering her.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason, and I don't think it's likely, but when Robert Ford at the end of episode 2, like, kind of hinted, like, oh, I'm going to introduce religion to these people, everything's going to hit the fan, I could only see maybe there's a weird way that he has a story that almost, like, rises above the norm of what even the hosts know, where some of these hosts are gods to the other hosts, basically.
Interesting.
Now, I don't know how it would connect to anything else, but, I mean, she could walk up and, like, not... I don't know how that's the other thing I don't know. How do, like, the humans know that their other humans are other humans? Have you figured that out?
Great question. Because, like, if somebody shoots somebody and that other person happens to be a human, then there's going to be...
problems.
Some horrible murder. That's the thing. Like, we're so intrigued in this, but a lot of the rules haven't really been explained.
Right.
And it keeps these questions up.
It's like the NFL unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. Like, no one actually knows what it means. You just see it happen sometimes.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, okay.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
I feel like in this episode, I think it was William and his, like, douchebag friend, who I guess we found out is going to be his future brother-in-law. Yeah,
didn't you call that, I think? I think you said that last episode.
I'm very rarely right, so I'll just inherently say no. But one of them made some comment, or William asked, I think, like, well, how come the bullets can't hurt us or something? And the guy was about to answer it, I believe, and then something else happened. I was like, damn it, I didn't want to know that.
Well, so you're talking about the scene where he kind of, like, saves the one prostitute, the girl with the huge eyes? when she is like basically being used as a human shield,
right?
And the one guy is gonna like kill her, and that's part of that whole narrative. And he's able to kind of be the hero, shoot the guy. He gets, of course, shot first because he's a pussy and can't just pull the trigger when he needs to. But that's what was interesting and ties into the whole timeline business is because he gets shot and like he falls backwards and it like very physically hurts him, and then he has like a huge bruise.
Right.
And I think that's I think that feeds a little bit into the theory that we talked about last week, where maybe he is the Men in Black just 30 years prior. And so maybe at the time they hadn't fully like perfected that technology. Like maybe they were just shooting rubber bullets. But I think his friends ends up telling him like, well, if it didn't hurt it a little bit, where would be the fun in that, or something like that. But they don't really like explain how or why that is.
By the way, that prostitute you're referencing with the ginormous eyes, you know those fake sunglasses that you can get at like a carnival that are 7 times the size of your normal eyes? She actually needs those for practical reasons. Not as a, hell, I'm being goofy. Like, legitimately, you're going to get UV rays.
You're freaking me out with your giant eyes.
You're freaking... She has probably insane peripheral vision just because she can see everything.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
She's like Santa Claus.
Makes sense.
So to that point, and this is kind of the third thing. So there were a few theories we threw out last episode regarding William maybe being the Man in Black 30 years earlier. I really wanted and still want that to be the case because I think it would be awesome. Mm-hmm. There is some interesting things going on with Dolores and her inability and then ability to use firearms, and a few different firearms that she has procured and is kind of like hiding around the house. So at the very end of the episode, she is about to be robo-raped. That's what we'll call it for this show. # robo-rape.
R².
Yeah, by another one of the hosts. And then she shoots and kills him, and then runs off. And then this may just be the show playing tricks on us, but then they connect it with William and his friend at a campfire, and she runs up very distraught over it. Right. You and I were talking a little bit pre-show. How do you interpret that scene and the theory of William as the Man in Black, which I still want to be true? How does that stay intact after that?
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, how do we know if her running distraught to them at that campfire is actually like, the camera didn't stay on her running the whole time? I mean, you would think it could connect, but I can't let go of the fact that this is Nolan. I mean, we could be operating on like so many different timelines. The whole scene where she's about to get # robo-raped, she like she's experiencing the same scene over and over, and the way they edited the shot, it was kind of obvious and kind of not that, hey, this is something she's done many, many, many different times, and she's slowly being able to reprogram herself to shoot. Because, like, first they show her, there's no gun, then they show her, there's no gun, then they show her, like, zoomed in, and she's like, wait, is there a gun? And all of a sudden she reaches in, and there's a gun, and she's almost like, how did I know there was a gun there? Like, she doesn't even realize how she came to that realization, but she has, like, a kind of like a moment of truth, and she's able to take the gun and then shoot. And even the moment, like, she probably went through and tried to actually shoot 100 other times and wasn't able to actually do it, and did get robo-rape, but then she finally was able to do it because each time she experiences it, she's getting a little bit better at actually, like, reprogramming herself to do something she's not programmed to do. That's kind of how I took that.
Okay, and that makes sense. So for the theory to work with Dolores, unlike the other hosts, has she been in this same loop since the inception of Westworld, basically? Because it seems like her story hasn't changed regardless of which character she interacts with.
Right, and maybe that's because they felt some sort of sentimental value to her being... Like, if you're going to do yeah, or because she was the first one, so it's like, let's just keep her... She's always going to be, like, the farmer's daughter. I don't know.
Right.
It's possible. It's possible. That would be the only thing that would make sense. They've obviously singled her out in past episodes, just in conversation. One
other thing I was wondering, and I just actually thought of this. So in the initial episode, I can't remember the name of the host who plays her dad, but he basically glitches out when he sees that picture. He fucking like loses his marbles, and they take him out. And that's shown to be present day because isn't that when the Man in Black comes and accosts her? Basically, he kills that version of her dad, right?
Yes, that's true. But then we've also seen the Men in Black like everywhere. Like we've seen them in like Thandie Newton's flashbacks, dreams,
Right,
whatever
but
you want to call them.
my
We
point was,
saw him in this episode. Like she quickly looked at the guy that she ended up shooting, and it was the Man in Black, and then she like
Right.
blinked, and it wasn't. So he seems to just be able to go anywhere and do whatever he wants.
I guess in the next episode, assuming that things pick up at some point with William and her at the campfire, we'll know a little bit more because based on, sort of the dialogue that they have, if she references like having just shot a gun or something like that, then it may put a bit more of a wrench in this as far as like the timelines not being connected. But if she
Right.
just says like something vague, like, oh, something traumatic just happened to me, that could be like she tried to go see Bridget Jones and it was sold out and she couldn't get in. I mean,
Right.
you know how some women, that's a big deal to them.
Is it?
I've heard. I haven't actually been around a woman in social setting in many decades, but
That makes sense. That makes sense.
unless you count World of Warcraft conversations.
Wouldn't it be hilarious if like Jonathan Nolan just like wrote this just to make us think that there will be multiple timelines, and then there's just like a proper narrative that has no, just like
with
beginning,
him,
middle, and end.
with him and JJ, not having a twist would actually be a pretty big twist, I think.
Pretty big twist,
Because
right?
everyone's like trying to get out in front of it, guess all these different things. No, this is a very
They're
straightforward.
like, no, it's actually a story. Did you enjoy our robot story?
It's like,
Like,
yeah, but it
wait.
means this, right? No, it's a very straightforward. It's a cut and dry. Nothing happens out of the ordinary. We just have
that
Anthony.
would be something. You're right. What if that is the twist? What if we're the twist? Like we just don't even know it yet.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, this has gotten to a level that I don't think anyone's ready to hear. I mean, as far as an episode goes, there was a lot that happened in this, but I think so much of it at this point is conjecture going forward and us trying to kind of connect the dots. That's pretty much all I had, to be honest. I just had a
I have a few. I have a few more things.
Good. Clean
one,
this up.
We're 3 for 3 on now Shakespeare references, which like I'm just like okay, great. That's something that's a common thread through the show so far. 2 is the last theory, and this one's kind of wacko, but I kind of wanted to put it out there just to see what you thought. What do you think about the theory that's come out there that like are we even on Earth? What's happening? Like, where is this taking place?
There really has not been a reference to anything.
And I guess, does it matter where we are?
Yeah, that's a good point. So, as far as being on Earth, yeah, there hasn't been like even the employees at Westworld haven't referenced like, did you see that NFL game or something to that context that would ground them on the planet Earth. The other thing that
Roger Goodell would not allow them to say NFL without paying him, $7 billion.
He could easily be a host as well.
Oh my God! Westworld, Roger Goodell is actually a robot.
What if the whole NFL is Westworld because it's that ridiculous of a place?
No sense. Actually.
One thing that you and I also brought up before the show. So the movie Westworld from the '70s, directed by Michael Crichton. We haven't seen either of us, and personally, I don't want to see it, at least before watching this. I don't know if they're connected at all, not in terms of being in the same universe, but is this, just straight up an homage to that, or is it actually playing off of some of the story? Mm-hmm. But in that, there is a Westworld. Basically, Westworld is one of a couple theme parks, for lack of a better term, that are of the same thing. There's like a medieval times world, I believe there's a futuristic one, a space one, or something like that.
Yeah, there's like a Roman world. Like there's a bunch of these different theme parks that'll have the same, which obviously gives the creative minds behind this version of the TV show version just so much wiggle room, especially when they have the budget they have.
Exactly.
The things they can do is crazy.
So that's what I'm wondering is Westworld just one of a couple different worlds, and maybe there's 3 or 4 other versions of Robert Ford that have created those, or maybe he actually created all of them, but Westworld is the one that he's focusing on now. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of possibilities there. Obviously, we don't know where that's going, or if that will be. That could maybe even be a future season of this show, but it is something to keep in mind.
I don't know. Do you think they'll renew it?
I don't think it's good enough.
Yeah,
plain and simple.
Aren't watching
and the cast is
just
just really shitty.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably worse than True Detective Season 2 so far.
Yeah, I would put... It's definitely no Gilmore Girls, which is Is it fair to make that the barometer for television?
No, that's impossible.
It's not, but I think you need to strive for greatness every time you do something in life. And that goes for all of you.
Strive for greatness.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, Alex, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add, but my brain matter is all over the floor after I watch this episode. I'm ready to pick it back up next week and watch episode 4 and see if I can reassemble a coherent thought.
Yeah, I'm gonna go drool on the floor face down for a while.
That sounds healthy.
Yep.
In all regards.
That's how I consume this show.
Thank you guys for checking us out. We are the Bro Force Squad. Check us out online, broforcesquad.com. You can find us on Facebook, Bro Force Squad, 3 words. Twitter, @BroForceSquad. YouTube, Bro Force Squad again. This has been Jeff Hornacek and Alex English. We appreciate you guys checking us out. And we will talk to you next time, probably after episode 4, if not before. Thanks, guys.